Yes, sir, we are live now.
Hi friends, this is Dr. Anuj Maheshwari, Governor, American College of Physicians India Chapter. I welcome you in this second episode of very important and very unique kind of the program Soul Curry, which has been designed by American College of Physicians India Chapter with specific thoughts given by Dr. Ajay Tiwari. And Dr. Ajay Tiwari is behind the design of this program. And I'm really proud and feeling very good that this kind of a program we could be able to bring before you. And I hope this program would be having a great impact on your day-to-day practice. And probably you will be following the well-being rules in your day-to-day practice. Today we are having a very unique and very specific guest for you to tell about more on well-being issues. So I would like to hand over this podium to Dr. Ajay Tiwari to take the meeting forward. Over to Ajay.
Thank you, Governor Sir, for this opportunity. At the onset, I would like to thank Dr. Marion for accepting our invitation to be part of this program. She is very passionate about spreading well-being and has been involved in the training and execution of various well-being initiatives of American College of Physicians. During my session with her, she prodded me to initiate well-being initiatives for our chapter. On the auspicious occasion of the Independence Day of India, we launched Soul Curry, the well-being lounge of American College of Physicians India Chapter, with our governor as the first guest. And he was the first well-being champion from India. So why the word Soul Curry? Because all happiness emanates from the soul. It is the fountainhead of supreme happiness, what we call Chidanand. And the curry is the word which instantly relates with the India world over. So our governor, Professor Anuj Maheshwari, he encouraged me to embark on this journey. We are designing a series of online and offline programs to promote wellness in our chapter. So now I would request our governor, Professor Anuj Maheshwari, to introduce our esteemed speaker.
Thank you, Ajay. I'm feeling a great pride introducing Dr. Marion. Dr. Marion McCready is the MD FACP, the primary care internal medicine physician at Duke Signature Care in North Carolina. She is National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach and serves as the Associate Director of the Duke GME Coaching Program. In addition to her day jobs, she is a state and national leader with the American College of Physicians and serves as the governor for the North Carolina ACP chapter. She is honored to be faculty coach and curriculum developer for the American Medical Women's Association, Elevate and Evolve. These are the names of the association, and they are really working for the leadership development program for female physicians and residents. Narrative medicine and story sharing is revived interest of hers. She is the co-founder of the Writers Wellness Workshop, a monthly narrative medicine series open to all doctors and medical students. In addition, she loves amplifying physicians' stories on Reset MD, a podcast she and several ACP well-being champions started in 2020. She shares her home with Kat, her husband of 25 years, and their Labrador Morgan. So today, most likely, we are going to have one of the most intelligent and most vibrant and versatile guests. She will be telling us about not only about well-being, we'll be having and we'll be enjoying her skill of narrative medicine, storytelling, and many more. Let's see and wait for the wonderful 1 hour which awaits all of us. Over to Dr. Marion to start your deliberation.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And as we were speaking before we went live, I had the chance to watch your inaugural Soul Curry event and loved hearing from you both, and really found all of the encouragement that you gave for self-care to be really inspiring. You talked a lot about where burnout is in your chapter and worldwide, and some of the things that you could do about it. And so I wanted, as I move into my slides and presentation today, to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you might use for yourself to be able to start to implement some of those self-care tools and tactics, and really deciding what works for you. I'm going to share my slides and then we'll get started. And I have my here. Okay, perfect. And I will, I think I can see everything. I wanted to give you guys some color here as well. So I've diverged a little bit from the ACP yellow and green, but I hope you'll appreciate it. And what I'd love to do today is talk a little bit about how you can take time for yourself. And that may not be the thing that we first think of when we think about getting up in the morning and what we need to do. We are often so focused on others and the people that we take care of as physicians. But I really think that this is something that deserves its time to think about what works for you, how you can create the life, whether it be professional or personal, for you that really serves you. So thank you again for having me here for Soul Curry. And I am, as already introduced, first and foremost, a physician. I am a health and wellness coach, which is something that I trained in, I will say, and have used since the time that I became a well-being champion with the ACP, and love working with our trainees at my institution to be able to help them see, what might be helpful for them in this early stage of their career for their personal development, their professional development, and then to be able to take that with them throughout their careers. And I'm a mid-career, almost late career physician. And these are some things that I really wish I had learned earlier in my career. So that's my why, in addition to being a clinical physician, that I have pursued other avenues to help people. Initially, it was to help my patients, and then I quickly learned that it was paramount for physician well-being and to help with leadership training as well. And so I want to start us off today as we think about creating the time that we need for ourselves within our busy days and the obligations that we have, with this quote that, as we read here, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And often in medicine, particularly with our long training path, we are moving from one step to another, taking a test, being certified, getting our degrees, moving forward, starting practices. If you're in academics, you have these milestones to increase your level of academic achievement. And it's something that we often sort of just get busy. And we do these things day in and day out, but we look back at a time and say, where did the time go? How have we spent our days? And so I know I'm speaking to an audience who knows the benefit of mindfulness and recognizing and having gratitude for the things that we are offered. But I want you to think about the time that you spend each day and how that is something you might consider differently when we start to pull ourselves in and what we need more. And when I work with individuals, with the residents and with physicians, using a coaching strategy, it's very different than if I am coming in as a mentor to give advice. And so what I'd like to do today is really give you all the opportunity to take this time, this hour that you've blocked off to be in this program, and to really focus in on yourselves. Because I'm not going to sit here today and tell you this is exactly the formula that is going to work for everybody to find well-being, to use the time for your benefit. But I'm really going to give you a chance to reflect, to figure out what's important to you, where you see yourself going. And in that way, you have all the answers inside of you to design this process of how you want to spend your life. So I'm hopeful that by the end of this, you'll have some more tools that you can use to really sort out what self-care looks like for you, how you want to incorporate that in your life and your day. And so I have two quotes here. One is from a psychologist named Albert Laszlo Barbarsi. And he says, time is our most valuable, non-renewable resource. We can't get it back once it's passed. And if we treat it with respect, and if we want to treat it with respect, we need to set priorities. And priorities are basically what's important to us, what's valuable to us, how do we want to spend our time? The second quote is far from a psychologist, but a very successful entrepreneur in the United States, and Mark Cuban. And he says that time is the most valuable asset that you own. We often think our time belongs to other people, but he says it's the most valuable asset you don't own. You may or may not realize it yet, but how you use or don't use your time is going to be the best indication of where your future is going to take you. So as we think about today, taking time for yourself, really analyzing how you spend your time and how you want to spend it moving forward, take these words and thoughts with you. And so we're going to spend a moment of reflection. And if I was doing this live in a workshop format, we would actually give people a chance to sort of spend some time writing and thinking and going through these reflection questions. Today, I'll read those, and you'll have the opportunity, if you're seeing this live, to watch it back on recording later, and you can stop and pause it and actually answer these questions for yourself in real time. So the first reflection is, you may feel like your time's not your own. You are in a service-heavy position, a career, where, again, you're putting other people before you often, and their needs and their wants. And so I ask you, as you think about sort of that time not being your own, when does time slow down? When do you feel like you might sort of get a handle on it, have some control back for that time that you spend? And then as you're thinking about those times, do you actually recognize those when they're happening? Are they planned, or are they more in the moment? If you find that you have an extra 30 minutes, how would you spend it? Would you spend it on yourself? Would you spend it catching up on something? And when time does slow down, how often is that happening for you? Is it on a daily basis that you set aside time to really focus on this, or is it infrequent? And then if you're sitting here thinking, gosh, I have no idea when that happened for me last, I just feel like I'm on to one thing to the next, what are some of the things that are barriers for you just to slow down time and noticing that when this occurs? And then the second slide here of reflection, as you are spending time thinking about this, there's just a comment first, that integrating your work, your career, the service that you do as a physician, and the rest of your life can be challenging. And we often say, work is life. Life is work. It's all intertwined. But for some individuals, they feel like they can separate them, or they're very separate. And there's always this chance to try to balance it. So when you are integrating your professional life and your life outside of your profession, and it goes well, it's just in sync, it's working well together, you feel like you have time for both of these aspects of yourself, what's happening? What sets you up for that? When is it happening? And what are the things that you like to do outside of your work? When you start to think about that, are you able to do those? How's that going? Are you able to do those frequently? And then the fourth comment here is, what are some small ways that you can honor the things that you love outside of medicine? Whether that be your family, whether that be a hobby that you have, whether it be a calling, a service role that you have. Is it your fitness, your health? As we were hearing, physicians in India die earlier than the national average, is one of the things I took away from the first Soul Curry conversations that you had. And then how can you create this white space for times for integrating this? And white space for me is saying, there's an open spot on my calendar. There's nothing that I have to get done. It's sort of, I can do whatever I want with that time. And that helps me be able to put in that what I want. It's not already accounted for. So those are things that I would say are important to take time to set aside for yourself to think about those. And so the first step of taking time for you may be to really find 30 minutes, find an hour, maybe it's find a day to sort of do this soul work where you're working through what is something that you want to create. And so I'm going to give you several frameworks, several options, and that you might use to be able to set your time the way that you want for yourself. And we'll move through these throughout the presentation. You may love them all and want to try them all out, or one over the other may speak to you. Before we do that, I have my hair down today, but I often wear it up like this person in this picture here when I go to clinic, just to have it out of my face. And so I see this in myself. And when I say, does this look familiar? What I imagine this woman is doing here is she's got all of these things she's trying to keep going. So these plates, when you put them at the end of the stick, they sort of just go in a circle, and you've got to sort of keep them moving. And so she's trying to keep all these plates up in the air and not falling down. And so sometimes I feel this way. It's sort of a sense of being overwhelmed with all the things that I want to do for me and for other people. And it starts to feel very stifling. And so often I'll want to spend some time just sort of stepping back and figuring out, are there things that I need to take off of that plate and put aside for right now to be able to concentrate and focus on the things that are really important to me. And so I find that sort of resetting my mindset can be a way to do that. So I want to think a little bit, or want to talk a little bit with you all about this concept of positive psychology. And positive psychology was initially an idea coined by Dr. Martin Seligman. And Dr. Seligman did this probably about 25 years ago when he became the president of the American Psychiatric Society. And he said, we spend all this time thinking about disease, how to fix it, how to diagnose it, what to do about it. And he was speaking about this in terms of psychiatric diseases, but I think we also do this in medicine. And sometimes it's hard for us to pull back and think about, how can we be preventative? How can we sort of be proactive? And so he brought this charge to his group of what would happen if we started focusing in on the things that are going well, the positivity, the joy, the flourishing, the things that, just make us have a smile on our face when we get up in the morning, and the things that we want to put our energy into. And we know our brains are wired to find the negative. It's a evolutionary way that we have formed to be protective. It's a way we look for threats. So we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't often find the time to think about what's going well. And so we find we're solving problems all the time. And I want to think about it a little bit differently, that we're not a problem to solve, but in actuality, we are these wonderful human beings with all these possibilities. And how can we explore that more? There is another, I'll say, mother of positive psychology, who's actually in my hometown here in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina, named Barbara Fredrickson. And both of these individuals are PhDs. And she talks about this 3-to-1 positivity ratio. So what that means is, since our brain is hardwired to see the negative, to seek it out, then it takes 3 positive ideas, positive energy ideas, to cancel out 1 negative. So we have to kind of keep looking for the positive, the gratitude, the excitement, the energy, the good in our day, to be able to balance that out. So I encourage you, as you hear more about what I am presenting today, to think about where you find positivity in your day and how can you amplify that. She says that once we're able to see more of the positivity, it actually helps us get unstuck. Being focused in the negative, we get stuck in our thoughts and where we are, and we don't see the bigger picture. And so actually seeing more positivity and experiencing that and having that acknowledgement in our day helps us sort of broaden our way of seeing the things that are in front of us. And so one of the things that Dr. Seligman talks about is, how do we find flourishing? How do we go from just barely surviving to sort of just getting through the day to flourishing in the day? And he has an acronym here, PERMA, that's often called PERMA. And the citation here is to the website that talks more about it through the University of Pennsylvania, where he is a faculty member still. And I want to go through these just a moment, and I want you to think how you find these in the way you spend your time right now. So the first is positive emotions. And our positive emotions, as we talked about, are really a prime indicator of a flourishing individual. They're happy. They have this mindset of seeing the good in things. And so these positive emotions can be anywhere from joy, love, compassion, fulfillment, amusement, gratitude, hope. There are many others. Those are just a few. And so it's really the place to start. He also talks about engagement as the E in this acronym. And when we think about engagement, it's where do we feel like we're in the flow? And flow is a term coined by a different psychologist, but it's when we're in the moment. It's almost like that time passes by and we don't even notice it because we're so excited about what we're doing. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's if we're an athlete and we're swimming or we're running and we're just like, you just kind of feel like this feels natural, it feels normal, everything feels good. That's engagement. So where do you find that in your day? I've talked to surgeons who said, they're in this case of operating on someone and they just feel that's all they're focused on, and tying the next knot and doing the next step. It just feels so engaging to them. The R is relationships. And so put the positive on there again. And we think about the people that are in our lives every day, whether they be our relationships that we have with patients, our coworkers, our colleagues, our family members, our friends, the person who works at the store we stop by every night, who we've become friendly with and we've known for a long time. And then how do you cultivate those? How do you do more of the things that are important to maintain these relationships? Here in the ACP, we laugh at times and say people come for the medicine or the science and they stay for the people. And that's been my engagement with the ACP. I love the people that I get to work with, the collaborations I get to do, to speak to people across the world from me about things that are important to me. That gives me meaning and that helps me flourish. And I mentioned the word meaning. So M is meaning, and that's our purpose. And we find that if we're able to do things that are meaningful for us in our day-to-day, even just 20% of the time in our day, then that fuels us back. It gives us energy and it makes us want to continue to do that work. And then the last is accomplishment. An accomplishment is something, I think we're familiar with. And everybody's sense or threshold for accomplishment, what your goal is at the end of something is different. And it may be to become a professor. It may be to work for 25 years. It may be to have a patient say thank you once a day. Whatever that might be, you have that own personal sense of what accomplishment might be. And if you're able to find that in your day-to-day, or you find that in your year when you're looking back, then that continues to fuel you to be able to do what you want to do with this work. And so I know I spent a lot of time on that, but I think it's something that's really easy to keep in our mind and remember, and sort of give ourselves a little checklist at the end of the day or the end of the week about which things went well and which things we need more of. Building on positive psychology, I'm going to pretty quickly go through a tool called appreciative inquiry. And it is it's something I love to speak on because I think it's just a total shift in our mindset. Often when we approach something we want to change, or I will say a problem, we come at it with, how do we find out what's going wrong, and then can we fix it? This instead takes us with a strategy where we're going to focus on what's going well and how we can do more of it. And I created this little graphic here. I love to do, graphic design. And it is comes out of the work, of David Cooperrider and David Whitney. And they talk about this being a positive revolution and change. So this would be a strategy you could use if you are saying, gosh, I need to make some changes in my life. I'm focusing all on this and I want more time for this. How do I do that? So here's going to be one strategy that we'll use. And he talks about having this positivity at the core, which is there in the red lettering, and then the 5 Ds. And the 5 Ds we'll go through in a little more detail, but defining what you want to change, discovering what you need to know about it, setting up sort of a dream. What would this look like if it would perfectly? Then moving into the design phase, we know what we want to do. How do we make it happen? And then the destiny is it's actually happening and you're benefiting from it. And so it builds on the positive psychology, getting past that bias we have for negativity. What's working well, what's an opportunity for us, and how can we uncover more of what's going well and what could be. Again, not focusing on weaknesses or problems to fix. It actually helps you take what you're good at, your strengths, and helps you lead with that. So you use those at the beginning rather than trying to go from something you're really mediocre at to get it up to average. You're starting on things that you're already good at and making them even better. And this is not what some people would call toxic positivity, where you ignore the problems, you ignore toxic, dangerous environments, and just put a smile on your face and keep going. This is actually really finding what works to make this positive change. So the first part of this 5D strategy is to define the topic of inquiry. We're talking about appreciative inquiry. What you appreciates, you spend more time on it. And this part, we really want to focus it in on what do you want to change? And so maybe I've used the example of, I have all this charting I need to do, electronic records, how they just take all this time. And I want to finish my day with all of my charts done and none of them hanging over my head into the evening or to the next day or to the weekend. And so that's a challenge for me. It's something that I would like to change, and I can get really specific about it. And then here, as we're sort of writing and creating, what's happening, we're opening the book of what's going well, and we're going to appreciate it. We're really going to get to know it. We're going to think about, why is this going well? So there's a series of questions here on the side, really looking at what's working right now that's really good. There's always something that's good. We may have to dig for it, but it's there. And then that's the now. And then what's worked well in the past? What's been your experiences when you've said, wish it every day could be like this. This is how it's supposed to be. What do you know you're good at and what's important to you, the strengths and the values? This can be something you can use for yourself personally, but it's also a strategy you could use in an organization. So if you're coming at how do we make changes with our practice, with our group, with your partners, or your department at your institution, you can use this strategy as well. And so you really want to play this out. Tell a story. So imagine you're talking to a colleague and just really describing this in detail, pulling in all the things that you can, and then think about how this connects to that deeper purpose of why you do what you do. And through this discovery, keep your mind well tuned in to things that are going well, because you're going to use this as evidence and you're going to use this as experience to carry forward with you. And so when you start to think about these things and really write down, this is what we know, you're going to take this into the next step. Just like this young girl here, she's got her eyes closed and she's dreaming, she's thinking about what could be. And I imagine her wanting to be an astronaut with all of the different chart drawings that are going around beside her. And so when you are dreaming about what you would like your life to look like, when you can spend your time the way you want with all the things that you want to do, I want you to just start dreaming this and talk it and paint a picture, say it out loud, pretend like you're already there and you're describing it to the person like it's happening. This could be your 3-year plan, something you want to do in 5 years. It could be something you want to do in the next 6 months. You get to decide the time frame, and you're really thinking about what calls me, where's the energy, and if anything was possible, what might be an option for me. So this is not the place where we put in, oh, can't do that because I don't have enough money, or no, I can't do that because we've already planned this. Just let it be wide open. It really is a fun thing to do. And then once you've got this dream, you have this vision of where you want to be in the future, what it looks like, then you've got to actually get into the details. You're starting to design it. You are brainstorming. You're going to pull out any possibilities. Some people actually draw this out in a map, a path. You're starting to pull in your design, and you need to know, what do I need to create this? Who needs to support me? Do I need to talk to my spouse about this? Do I need to have them kind of help me do some of the things that I want to do? Do I need to talk to my partners? Do I need to change my hours of when I'm practicing? Do I need to buy some running shoes because I want to start running for exercise? Whatever these things might be. And we have been in our head. We've been sort of thinking and we've dreaming. This is when we actually start making goals and we start making commitments, and those are actions. And we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about this design phase and bring in a strategy that's been written about by faculty at Stanford in California, a little bit more about this and how you actually have to act on the things that you want for them to happen. And so our last part of the 5 Ds is destiny. It's what will be. If we work through this process, we dream it, we design it, we actually do it. Sometimes destiny in this 5D strategy is called deliver. We're actually going to deliver this and try it out. And as we talk about our experience with this, the more we prove to ourselves that we can get things done, that we are good at this, it builds our confidence and we can continue to do more of it. So if you are in a situation where you're like, this never works for me, I tried this before, it doesn't work, I can't do it. How many times have we heard our patients say that when we are trying to help them make health changes? Those are sort of the things we're listening to here. And so we've got to have open minds and think with that growth mindset that we can do something different. And so we know about goals. We know about SMART goals that we work with our patients for change, that's specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound goals. This is where you may end up being. You may need to set these goals for yourself. And then thinking about, okay, I've done it. How do I keep doing it? You're going to need people to support you. You'll need to continue this. You need that confidence that I mentioned. So appreciative inquiry may be one way that you can start to make the changes in your life that you want. I mentioned the design school, and I want to show you a few slides from Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, who are the faculty at Stanford in California that I mentioned. And they started this program, they taught classes, and then they wrote these 2 books. There are more books that they wrote, but these are the 2 that I've read and taken information from. One is Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life. I think that's what I'm talking about here in a nutshell. And then also they then later wrote, How do you design your work life to thrive and change and find happiness at work? And so if you take away anything from today and you're a reader or you want to listen to this on Audible, these are two things that may be helpful for you to create some strategy. And so they talk about this idea of a maker mixer board. And I'm not a musician. I don't write music, but I've seen these, particularly when I've seen television shows about how people are creating music and records and CDs and all the things that we've had over our lifetimes. And when you see this, you can see that there are items that are pushed up to the top and some are pulled down to the bottom, and then there's some in the middle. And they talk about our lives in this same way. And so one of the strategies that we think about when we design what's important to us is we get to do it over and over again. We don't decide it once when we're 20 and we keep this thing throughout our life. You know, we may need to redesign this every couple months or every few years as new things come into our life, as we move things out of our life, we change roles, we have new family members. And so we have to make adjustments. Some people would refer to this as different seasons of your life. And so for sometimes in your life, particularly during training, you're focused on work. That's your main focus. As you get out into practice, you may be focused on work initially, but then find maybe things are a little easier. I can do other things, depending on when your family forms and when your children are young versus when they're older. You have different responsibilities. So think about this as we talk about these maker boards. And they also describe sort of this dashboard. And they think about that there are a couple of things as you are moving things up or down in your life, is that you may have a focus on that you may need to really kind of incorporate into your design or your plan. And one of those things may be money. When you think about where you are in your work life, is this the time you're focusing on how much money that you're making, that you need to repay debts that you have? And so you really have to kind of drive the income that you have. Whether other times in your life, you may feel like, okay, I'm set, I have savings. I don't have to be so focused on the money aspect of a career. The other things you can think about as you're moving things around in your design is, what is the impact that you want to have? What's important to you, that purpose? You may be a person who wants to renew or repair things. So I think about that in the work that we do of treating disease with our patients, helping them try to get back to a healthy state. Sustaining and supporting. As a primary care physician, I do a lot of preventative care. So for me, I want to sustain their health. I want to help them in that way. Other folks really love that creating new things. And I think about them as the researchers, the innovators, creating new devices and ways of taking care of patients. All of those things are in that impact, but what you might find drives you is different than what drives me. And then expression. In the introduction, you heard that I have loved sort of starting to get creative. And that wasn't something I did early on in my career. I have created a podcast with other ACP well-being champions where we talk to physicians about what's worked for them in their well-being. And for me, that feeds me back. It's something that I get so much out of having those conversations and sharing those with other people. It may be different for you, whatever that expression might be. You might be an artist. You might, again, find that's the time for really focusing in on your health. And so some of the considerations as you think about yourself as a designer, which may not be a title you've given yourself, and creating this board at different times in your life is, again, there's seasons of your life. Different parts of your story are louder at different times. And so when you're trying to get that perfect sound for you, that perfect music that comes out, what is that right? What is that for you right now? What makes it sound right, that it's not too high of a bass or treble to be in tune? And Bill Burnett and Dave Evans called this coherence, when everything fits together the way it's supposed to be. And that's what you continue to work to create. And so if you can pay attention to your life, find some time for reflection, really do some of this work that we're talking about, you can find that happiness, that flourishing, once you get the mix dialed in for what works for you. And so you have to be curious. You have to think differently. You have to think like a designer and see what you discover. And so some of the things that are the mindsets of a designer, again, curiosity. You're interested to see, how could this be different? You're not judging yourself. You're not kind of saying, gosh, I wish I would have done this differently. I've wasted all this time. You're curious about, how can I do this differently now? You're switching to that positivity. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we've got to designers actually do things. They don't just think about them. They have a bias to act, to really put this into action. And for a long time, when I went through a stage in my career where I felt really burned out, I was just consuming things. I was taking in information. I was reading about burnout. I was just trying to understand it and where I was. And it wasn't until I started to say, okay, these are the changes I need to make, and actually started doing them, that I actually could get out of that. Reframing is sort of asking a different question, thinking about things in a different way. And it actually helps you get unstuck, to say, is this really the question or the problem here, or is there something else that might be helpful? Awareness is so key. And we often, again, get stuck in thinking of, okay, this is just how it has to be. But when we step back and we think about, why is this important to me, really trying to understand it, it is the first step. And then radical collaboration sounds very interesting. But for me, it means bringing others in on this conversation, having help. If you are kind of struggling with where to go next, get the opinion or get the thoughts from a trusted individual. Have them brainstorm with you. Think of things outside the box. And then come up with lots and lots and lots of ideas. This is the term that they use in the book, ideate, ideate, ideate. And so it's just letting all the ideas flow, try them out. Don't start judging them initially, just let them come, and then you can sort of narrow them down later. And building prototypes. So when we think about designing a new car, designing a new product, you've got to actually make it. For us, if we're designing or changing things that we want, we have to try them out. We have to experiment with them. And so that's where we learn. We learn what's working, what's not working, and then we make pivots and adjust. So if there's things that you're really interested in pursuing for changes for you, so that you feel like your alignment of your work and your life outside of work fits more with where you want it to be, you've got to try things and keep doing them. And so one of the quotes from their book is, you design your dream life through a process of actively seeking it and co-creating it. And so I will to leave you with a little bit more time to think, and we're going to do an assessment. So when I did my training as a health and wellness coach, I use these tools, and I'm going to go through those with you a little bit. And some of these things you may have seen before, these strategies, but some may be new. And my training was as an integrative health coach at Duke, and this was the sort of the model that we used and we were trained on. As you see at the top there is the vision. And we talked about dreaming and creating this vision of where you see yourself in the future as sort of the top, where we start. And then as we think about what's important to us, where do we have meaning? What are we good at? Why is this important to us? Those are the values. And so as we kind of dive into this, where we need to think, okay, here's where I want to be. Here's why it's important to me. Before I even get down to that focus to decide all those sort of things I'm ready to change and get in that cycle of change, I need to do an assessment. I need to decide and figure out where I am right now before I know how to get to where I want to be in that vision. So I'm going to give you a few ways to do that. And I've cut and paste here, so there's a little bit of cut off of the title, but both of these are from Duke Integrative Medicine. And they use these as a wheel of health. I would say just call it the wheel. You may call it your wheel of life or wheel of health. And you notice they've upgraded it. So the one on the left was during my training in 2019, and now they use this more purpley one, which has less things in it. In both of them, you are at the center, and you have a mindful awareness about what is important to you, where you are, who you are, where you are right now. And if we look at the one on the left, the things that are sort of surrounding the circle, there in the green, are different aspects of us. And I want you to pay attention to them as I go through them really quickly. And then we're going to have a chance to sort of, for you to think, where am I in all of these areas in my life? So one is our mind-body connection. The one there at sort of the 1 o'clock position is movement, exercise, and rest. Sort of how do we use our body? Our nutrition, our personal and professional development. I see you coming tonight to this presentation as one thing for yourself for personal and professional development. We think about our physical environment. Is your office cluttered? Is it clean? What does that bring into you one way or the other? Our relationships and our ability to communicate with people in our lives. And then the last one on the left is spirituality. And so these are all aspects of you. There may be other things that aren't on this slide that are important to you that you're not sure if it fits in one of these buckets. On the right, very similar. They've sort of changed the names a little bit and narrowed that down and sort of taken into what we're calling personal and professional development, sort of that fulfillment and purpose, and then that emotional well-being. And so you get to decide as you look back to this, which one speaks to you more and which one might be more helpful for you. And so we'll spend a little bit more time reflecting. I'm full of questions. That's what coaches do. They ask questions, they listen, they reflect. So this is one big coaching session for you all. As you think about that wheel and where you are now, that vision, again, of where you want to be, how do you picture your best health and life? This is definitely one of those questions to come back to. And as you are thinking about that picture of your best health and life, what is the most important aspect of this as you think about this picture of your best health and life? Why is this important for you? You've created this picture. Why is it the way it is? And so one of the ways that you can use your own wheel to further explore this is you can make this on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be colored like this. There's no significance of white in the middle and blue on the outside. It's just for the slide. But what you can see here is all of those spaces are blank. You get to put in for yourself sort of 8 aspects of you, your life, and you decide what's important, where you're going to assess. And then you are going to give yourself a score of where you are right now in these areas of your life, with 10 being sort of the top of where you want to be, and 0 being sort of at the bottom, there in the center. And as you do that, where you are now, think about, why did you choose this number? You sort of have to prove to yourself why you gave yourself that number. And so you will sort of make a little X on all of these, and you can connect them if you want. And the other place we'll go is thinking about, okay, well, that's where I am now. Where do I want to be? Do I want to be at a 6 for my sleep and my rest? Or do I want to be at an 8? Why did I give myself a 6 initially? And what would an 8 mean to me? What would be the difference? And then as you sort of compare that, what changes can you make to help you get there? And if you start to sort of write this out, you can sort of color these in. Here's where I am now. Here's where I want to be. You often find you don't have a very even wheel. There are aspects of where it's bumpy. You may have more on this side than this side, and that's okay. It's just your way of sort of having a visual of where you are and where you want to be. And so the other things that you can do as you kind of create this and give yourself an assessment and think through this is then to ask yourself some questions. after you've got this in front of you? What stands out for you as significant about where you are currently in any given area of the wheel? Just think about this more. Why is this important to you? And then also sort of think to yourself, okay, if I want to make a change, if I sort of give myself 3 to 10 years, whatever time frame fits for you, what would happen if nothing changes and you stay right where you are right now? You're at a 6 in whatever you've chosen. What's the worst thing that would happen if you stayed right where you are? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's a lot. Maybe if you're at a 2 with your family relationships, if you stay there for long, maybe that family relationship continues to be strained. The second piece is, okay, I'm at a 6 right now. I want to be an 8. What would be, if I do this, if I go from a 6 to an 8, what would my life be like at this time frame I say in the future? What's the best case scenario? If all goes as I planned, what could happen? What are the possibilities? And so you really start to see a big difference here. And so it's a way for us to sort of, okay, you know what? I've never put the effort in to make these changes. This is starting to remind me there's a reason for this. There's importance for this. This is something that in my life, this is important for me to do right now. So as you think about what's next, this is sort of a tool that we used for folks as we're making changes. And those were some of the things on the initial circle or wheel that I showed you. And so it's okay if you say, gosh, my nutrition is at an 8 right now. It's exactly where I want it to be. I don't need it to change at all in 3 years or 5 years. Then as you see here, you're going to go down and you're going to make an X or a check by all of these. And you may put nutrition, no changes desired. I'm where I want to be. Maybe though, in your physical environment, you want to remodel your home. You want to buy a new home. You want to kind of clear out some clutter. And you're like, you know what? This is really important for me to do right now. And you have your reasons why. Then that's going to be the things you're going to mark the column. I want to do this within the next 3 months. But other pieces may be, oh, I can do that, but let's put that off till next year. Or I really want to do this in 3 years. And so what can happen sometimes as we look at this wheel, we want to fix everything and change everything at one time, but that's not often realistic. And so what's really helpful is we say, okay, what am I going to focus on for these next 90 days? What's next for me? You get to decide this. Another way you could pull this down and think about it for yourself is pulling it to 3 priorities for yourself. Maybe you want to say, what are my 3 priorities professionally this year? What are my 3 priorities personally? And then, if I do these things, thinking back, what's the best case scenario? What does it get me? And then how do I start moving along this path? Those are some of the design as we move forward in that way. And so I have talked a long time. I know we've got some questions that you all have for me and for the group, but as we finish up, I just want you to think, I've told you a lot of different things, different strategies. Think about maybe a few pieces or one piece of what you're taking home today that you can start to implement. You can start to think more of. Maybe it's set aside time to do some assessment, some reflection. And then as we think about sort of a map, what do we need to know where to go next? I see this person here, they're on the bridge, they're in the woods, they're going on this path, and they're using what they have in front of them as a map. How can you take the time to create your own map? Thank you so much. I have just had the honor to be here. Thank you for welcoming me into your chapter. And I am hopeful that this can be helpful. I'd love to hear from you if you have thoughts, and these are some ways to reach me. And I'm going to stop sharing, and thank you so much. And I'll answer any questions.
In fact, it has been one of the wonderful talk what I have ever listened on the well-being. Really, it was very much inspiring and very much thought-provoking. Ajay, your comments.
Thank you, Dr. Marion. It was really very exciting, and it was actually we need to reflect a lot on all these issues. So what I feel that I think that is the right message from your side. We ought to think like a designer. We have to think about a music composer, how we have to chop in our things and bring the things up and down. So that is, I think, the most important thing. So reflections are what we intend to do. And we are getting very nice comments from the people. And
Thank you.
I would first put in a caution that has been a very nice reflection, rather, by Dr. Swati Srivastava. So she has put in that for getting time for oneself, one would probably have to be less ambitious and have less work targets for oneself. How do we balance our desire to excel in work to our capacity as well as getting time for ourselves too? What is your formula for a perfect balance of work and leisure for our physicians? That's
Yeah. Now I'll reflect on that for a moment. I'll do my own reflecting, but I think it's, as that word, I think you said at the end, sort of what's the perfect balance? And it's so different for everyone. And there's probably not a perfect balance. You think about the seesaws that go back and forth, and you never are right in the middle. And so we're always continuing to try to make adjustments. I also think sometimes as physicians, we have these really high expectations of ourselves, which serve us in so many ways. But it also sort of drives us to feel like we have to do everything to the top degree. And so sometimes we find that, thinking back to finding and creating time to do some of the things that we want, it may not be that we can spend a whole hour doing this. But can we find 20 minutes in our day to play with our, to get down on the floor and play with our child or our grandchild? And if we do that, if we sort of set that up as our expectation, as almost our bare minimum, then it's easier to accomplish that. And so finding sort of what's the least amount that helps you feel like you have moved towards doing that can be helpful. And so I kind of say, take some of the pressure off yourself as you're thinking about this, and start small and try some of these things out, and then see what helps you sort of keep that momentum.
so.
I hope that was helpful for some
And
of
actually,
that question.
she is a very busy physician in a medical college. So she has put on her musings that how do we go through all this process, because that is very tough, because we are Indian physicians are really overworked, and
Yes.
burnout is a big issue, because our governor has put in a survey last year, and we found that there is a lot of burnout in our people, because we have got a big population to cater to and a relatively less number of specialists to cater them. So one more important problem that we encounter in our practices in India is about violence. So this mismatch of what we can give to our patients and what they expect from us. So that leads to a situation of violence. So how do you feel how we can deal with this issue sensitively, because that is what is the most important thing.
Yeah. And we're, of course, seeing that in the United States too. Unfortunately, there have been deaths of physicians at the hands of patients throughout the years, and that's the extreme violence. But there's violence at different degrees, where there's just someone speaking loudly to you, or yelling, or sort of creating a problem in the clinic. And it's been really interesting for me over the last several years as we train as physicians. We feel like we're really good at having conversations with patients and hearing from them. But as I started, again, training as a coach to kind of have a different way of working with patients, it really had me rethink how I have conversations with patients. And so often we in a loving way feel like we know, what's the next step for that patient, and we give them advice and we give them information and we encourage them. But what I've found is it's really helpful to sometimes just step back, even in our busy clinic when we know we have to get to the next patient, is just to stop and say, I want to hear more from you. Why is this important for you? How are you feeling? I know we're sort of at a impasse. And so I know it's not perfect, but sometimes it's sort of that, as you said, that disconnect between what a patient expects from you and what you can offer, and being able to have more of an honest conversation about that, and help them realize that you care about them, you're interested in them, but you have limitations too. And so sometimes the patient actually often just wants to be heard in a different way. And so if you feel like you've got sort of this back and forth with a patient that feels, violent or almost violent, how do you sort of take a step back and find out really where they're coming from, what's the root of that? And so it can sometimes take more time initially in the moment, but it can help salvage that relationship going forward. So it's something I would say, try it out. If you feel like that you are, again, butting heads, as we would call it, as a sort of an euphemism, then how to sort of take a step back and say, let's talk about this differently. Let me hear from you what your concerns are, and then I'm going to speak honestly as well, and hopefully we can come to a common agreement.
Marian, in India, we see most of the time people are doing overworked as a doctor.
Yeah.
Doctors are equated God in India. So what exactly happens when people, those who are having some sickness and are having poverty also, so they wish that doctors should treat them least amount of the money, or sometimes without money also. At the same time, they also wish that even if I am overworked, even if I have finished my outdoor hours, still they want that we should see them. Obviously, we all are human beings. We also tired. We also get mentally tired, physically tired. But if a person is coming and saying that you are my God and you please see, then many a times doctors are bound to see the patient. And the
Yeah.
same patient, when something wrong happens to him or his ward or his patient, then they become violent also. In India, patient-initiated violence is very, very common. And
Mm.
now it is a challenge to a doctor how to keep the balance between work and not doing the work, how to keep the balance between God and human being, and how could these things to be matched. I think these challenges may not be faced in US and UK kind of the country, but we are facing these kind of. Do you have or do you find any solution for or some suggestion for such kind of the situations to overcome?
Yeah. I hear you saying it's physicians in both of our countries are put up on a pedestal and seen as people have expectations of us, and they have things that they want us to provide for them, and there's different agreements. For some of us, it depends on what that looks like. And so in general, I would say that we know we have to take care of ourselves to be able to be well, so that we can take care of others. So for some people, it's sort of, that's the first step of being able to do the work in general. And to be able to do that, sometimes we have to pull back and set a boundary in some ways, and whether that be with the amount of time that we are available for our patients. I think it's a very different culture in that way, but there are physicians who are able to say, I can't see you now, I am off, or I'm kind of pulled back. And here are other options, but that's not always the case in parts of our country with physician shortages, and it's not always the case in other countries with how the system is set up. And so I wish I had a perfect answer for that. My normal would be to say, do the things that take care of you, so you can continue to do this work, but that's not perfect. It's It's not perfect. And I think it's something that we need to continue to have this conversation, because it may be something different for each physician that we talk to help them feel comfortable with that situation.
Ajay.
Um, uh, Dr. Marion, now I will be asking a few personal questions. So what was the best comment you got from your physician, from your patient as regards? So that was something which will give us some insights. So which you cherish.
Yeah, let's focus on the positive. I like that one in that way. So it was really interesting. I think we all get thank yous. We get, a gratitude and appreciation along the way. And at the end of 2019, I switched where I was working. And so I was working for 15 plus years in one clinic, and I had patients I'd seen all of that time, and made the decision to switch to a different health system and practice a little differently. And so there were a few months leading up to that, the patients knew I was leaving. And the things that really gave me most of a smile is folks saying that I had listened to them and that I had heard them and I had helped them. And so sometimes as we get busy, if a patient's saying, thank you for doing this, I used to say, oh yeah, thank you, and not acknowledge it. And now really kind of stepping back. And if someone stops and takes the time to say thank you to me, I stop what I'm doing, look them in the eye and say, thank you for that, and give them sort of that appreciation back. And so for me, there's a lot of those. There's not just one, but anytime a patient wholeheartedly expresses that sense of gratitude for me, it's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that continues to give me that positive energy back in that way.
Recently, any patient have given you some very memorable compliment, which would you like to keep remember? I'm just asking this because today I got a very strange kind of the compliments from my patient. She said, doctor, I was having so much of the problems since last time I visited to you, but you didn't tell me anything. I don't know, when I come before you, everything I forget. I think I am all right and I don't have any pain. I don't have any problem. So,
Your
I
magic.
thought that, yeah, this is a kind of the compliments I could take this as. So any such thing has happened with you, which you would like to share with us? You did something very good for some patient and he given you compliment, or given you for your skills, you received some compliments from patient.
Yeah. I will. I've had a few new patients recently who have had difficult situations. We'll just say that, not to give any HIPAA, any privacy issues, but where they have just really needed someone that they could connect with. And again, I think it comes back to that situation, being able to sort of sit and listen and just kind of get to know that person. And so one of the new patients' family members said to me, you're starting off great. This person already trusts you, that they feel like that you've listened to them like nobody else has. You don't have the answers yet, but they feel like they can come back. And this is a patient who's sort of like just hasn't found the right person yet. And so that to me recently is just a reminder that, hey, this is why I continue to do this the way I'm doing it. And I'm seeing the benefits of that. So I feel like I am almost telling you the same thing over and over again. And it's my secret. It may be something different for you.
Something has happened which has disappointed you when you did something good for your patient, but ultimately you thought that probably you should not have done this. This kind of the thing sometimes happen.
No. I disappointment's one of those emotions that I feel often, and I think as it goes back to sort of that expectations we have that we can be everything to everybody and sort of do all the things. And so I find that, the times I feel disappointed maybe when it didn't have the outcome that I wanted. And that happens a lot. We all want the outcome. But I think sometimes the disappointments are, when patients may not appreciate some of the efforts that you put forward for them. And maybe even sort of people that you're like, I keep trying, and they don't make the changes that you want. But we've got to ultimately know that our role is to give advice and to help, and those individuals get to make their own decisions. We're just here to sort of offer to them our experience and our knowledge. So I think that's where I feel disappointed is where I feel like I could have helped a person if they were just receptive to it. But again, that's more on my side than somebody saying that to me.
How much time it takes to come back after such kind of a disappointment? Many times we teach to our clinicians about resilience. So
Yeah.
this resilient we should also have in our own behavior and have in our own routine also. So how much time one clinician should take to come back out of these events?
Yeah. I think one of the concepts that we use with the residents that we coach and teach at Duke is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is sort of a self-awareness and sort of a self-regulation along with interacting with others. And there's tools with that through PhD Mark Brackett at Yale, and he calls it a concept of the ruler. And so sometimes when we are going through something that's difficult, we don't always know how we're going to respond. And so he has an acronym, and let's make sure I get them all right. R is recognize. So when we have something that's disappointing or those emotions that come up to us and that we are upset or disappointed or whatever that might be, that we have to sort of recognize what we're feeling at the time, start to understand it and start to dive back in. This is this reflection part of, why do I feel this way? Why is this eating at me? Why is this bothering me? What is this? And then actually labeling what you're feeling. And so that giving it a name is sort of that first step in regulating it. And so depending on how skilled you are at that and how often you've done that, that can really help you sort of help answer that question of how long does it take to sort of bounce back. If you are really in tune with understanding the thoughts and the emotions that come up for you when you experience something, whether it be a trauma or a bad outcome or just a difficult interaction, sometimes that's easier for a person to sort of get through that. And sometimes the ways to sort of regulate that after you've named it can be some of the things we've talked about here in self-care, like mindfulness and grounding techniques, just getting out in nature and sort of having the ability to sit and reflect and think and find gratitude. And that can often help reframe and change how you're thinking about the things that are bringing up those emotions and those thoughts for you right then. So it sounds like a mind trick, but it really is something that can help you move forward through any of those. And sometimes you can do that on your own. Sometimes it's helpful to have a person that you can sort of say these things out loud to, and have someone who can help you through a stressful time so that you can sort of bounce back. That resiliency that you were talking about in the previous soul curry, that little rubber band starts to snap back and it's not breaking. These are just tools and strategies that you can use to really support yourself through really anything that can be difficult.
Very interesting question came in the chat box. How to be more motivated and still content at the same time?
Say that one more time. How do we do what? And
motivation and contentment.
Oh yeah. Talk about a balance.
Yeah, it's very difficult to keep both that together.
Yeah. You can have both. I think you can have both at the same time. You can it's again, I think it goes back to one of those sort of what impact do you want to have? You can have that ambition, that motivation, that PERMA acronym I talked about, sort of the meaning and the accomplishments. You can sort of have both in there. And then that contentment is sort of just that positive emotion. I love where I am. You have gratitude for what you've done. You're happy with that. And you're excited about, what's my next opportunity to grow and to have, experiences and to do new things and learn. And then I see that sort of as the ambition. And so you can be happy with where you are and still want to better yourself in different ways. And I think that really kind of pulls in that example he uses of that acronym of how do you flourish? You've sort of got a combination of both of those things. Maybe that's a new book we need to write, how to do that. So, thank you all. I really have appreciated the questions and the ability to have this conversation today. It's always fun to talk about these topics to folks who are interested as well.
Ajay.
So now I would request our Governor, Professor Anuj Maheshwari, to give a vote of thanks. And it was very interesting listening all to the talks. And we got a lot of appreciations and reflections from our members. So the comments are pouring in like anything. And I think we will have lots and lots of talks, follow-ups of this in our subsequent programs. So I would request Professor Anuj Maheshwari to give a formal vote of thanks on the behalf of our chapter.
Thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Marion McCready. Wonderful evening we had with you. And of course, this was your morning. I don't know how much your day is going to happen.
Yeah,
But
I'm
we wish
heading
that
off to clinic right after this. So yeah.
I wish that, and we all from India chapter wish that your day must be very, very good. You must have a very good day and very good time. You have given a very nice learning, nice motivation to all of us to keep a good balance in our life about our motivation, about our work, about our duties, about our ambitions, because this is really very difficult. Medical profession is like that, where a lot of ambitions remain and a lot of duties are there. It's full of duties, full of ambitions, and very little time is there for the leader. And many times our family members really feel very, very bad, and they feel deprived of all these enjoyment what their friends and their other colleagues really get. So this balance really very difficult, and still we face a lot of other problems here in India, like country, and I think every country is having its own problems. So we are also having these kinds of the things, some litigation, some new laws, some this and that, some government restrictions, and out of that we have to live our life with our family members, which includes our parents, which includes our kids, and of course our spouse. So keeping a balance really a big challenge. Is just like walking on a small thread or very thin thread. So we had to perform that job. So wonderfully you have told us how to do this and how can we really move ahead despite having a lot of negativities there, keeping the positivity inside. Thank you, Marion. Would be looking forward to see you in Orlando again.
Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy your homework with all those reflections.
Thank you.
Thank you. So nice of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I will see you soon. Bye-bye.